What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Strategy Show. Friday morning, that means we're talking Sims. I love doing this personally. Get through the whole week, breaking down the matchups, the positions, all of that, and then we take it to the tools. We take it to the Sims, see what they're giving us. I don't think there's a better way to set the week up. And then tomorrow, you've got the tournament strategy show. And then it all culminates on Sunday with you-know-what, 3.5-hour live before log deeper dive. We got you covered. Anyway, glad to have you guys with us. I'm Dave Loughran, Laffy_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. And joining me, as always, Greg Ehrenberg at G Ehrenberg DFS. What's up, brother? How you feeling?
Yeah, it's been good. I've really look forward to it because every Friday you and I get to do the show together, and it's really the only time the entire time that I've worked here that you and I have been on the schedule regularly together. So it's been good to do these shows on Fridays.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Also, looking forward to seeing what type of results we get. I'm going into this blind on the Sims. I don't know about you. Did you do the Sims video already?
Nope. So I had every single week I had recorded a video breaking down FanDuel and DraftKings prior to this show, and I've just been busy this Friday morning and last Friday morning. So same, I don't really have a concept of what the results are going to end up being.
Yeah, me neither. And obviously ownership will change throughout the week or, in the coming days. Like you're going to get the best ownership projections on Sunday, but we got it. We got it. El Negro Loco, shout out to Laffy's dog in the back trying to get screen time. Yeah, she's annoying. If there's like a blanket back there or something, she'll do the digging paws at it to get it the right way, but no one wants her doing that on the couch. Yeah, guys, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Much appreciated. Helps us a lot, and subscribe to the channel. We're trying, we're making that push. We're north of 90K, doing our thing. Thanks to you guys. So let's do it. TE, can we talk NBA now? We will. But this is the best time of year, honestly, because the two sports I want to talk about, like that I actually want to talk about, are football and basketball.
Yeah, and we've got – so actually, Josh and I did a first look show when the pricing first came out a couple of days ago. And there's going to be more stuff coming very shortly. And then obviously we've got a week from Tuesday. The NBA season is going to start. And they'll be doing our normal NBA content, strategy show in the morning, deep dive, live before lock, all of that stuff. So it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, it is. I thought about that as well, Jake. Said never seen Greg or Ben wear a hat. Do you not wear any hats? Do you look goofy in them or something? Is that the problem?
So it's different, right? And also he's wrong because I had my Jake do it. I had my bucket hat that
I knew you were going to say that. That doesn't count.
Okay. All right. Well, bucket hats don't count as hats, even though I started a trend and Shohei Ohtani started.
No, you did it as a bit.
No, it was fucking cool. And Eric the people loved it. I put polls up on Twitter. Should I wear the bucket hat? And it was always yes. It was only Eric who would vote no. Everybody else loved the bucket hat.
Why aren't you still wearing it if it wasn't a bit?
Because I lost it.
How?
So the way I initially lost it is my dad took it from me because he thought it'd be funny if he started wearing the bucket hat. So my dad took it and then he started wearing it around and then just eventually it got lost.
That's a shame. We need to get you a new bucket hat.
There we go. Hey, next summer when DraftKings has its next VIP package for the summer and I get another tote bag from them and a bucket hat, we could bring it back. But yeah, I have no clue where it is.
Do you have any snapbacks or fitteds or anything?
Nope, not at all. I did when I was younger, but it also looked ridiculous on me. At the time, I thought it was cool because I had a massive Jufro, like one that would not even fit in the frame of my screen right now.
You look like Kyle from South Park when he takes his hat off.
Pretty much, except I would wear fitted Yankees hats then, and it would basically just like sit on the top of my Jufro.
Yo, that's a sick look though. If you can push it all the way down and the hair just kind of froze out. I don't have hair like that. Like my hair's straight, and but that would be sick, man. Just throw that hat all the way. Get the fitted. You know what you should do? Get it fitted, open it up, and get it onto your head, and then close it. Snap it once it's on your head.
So that actually, like, I had so much hair when I was younger. I don't even know what, like, there was no way for me to actually fit it on my hair. It would just sit on the top of my head, on the top of my hair.
We'll have to get you. I'm going to get you a nice snapback. I just want to see how it looks. I'm going to get you a nice snapback. I'm going to send it to your house.
All right. Sounds
well, anyway, atone for your sins here on a Friday morning. We're going into the weekend. Let's close this one out strong. Philadelphia Phillies dispatching the Atlanta Braves. Boy, what a fun one that was. It's crazy. The 84-win team, Diamondbacks against the Phillies. Phillies are like a legitimately good baseball team, but yeah, 162 game season to grab 100 wins, and all three of those teams are out. What a nuts sport that is, dude.
It's so random. Even the 162 game sample size, as dumb as it is, isn't even a good representation of who the best teams are. So you had like the San Diego Padres and one of the best run differentials in all of baseball, don't make the playoffs. I still think they're one of the best teams this year, but they have the worst record in baseball history in one-run games, which also means they don't make the playoffs. And then as for these playoff series, they're so closely competitive that even a team like the Braves, who are the best team in baseball, they're like, what, minus 190 favorites for the series over the Phillies. And I saw somebody written an article, I can't remember who it was or for which outlet, but they had found for each sport how long of a series you would actually have to do to accurately figure out who the best team is for each series. Baseball had by far the longest sample size needed if you were going to be playing a series to determine who the best team is. Luffy, how long would you guess you would need a reasonable sample size to accurately determine in a series? Best of what?
Well, you said 162 games isn't enough.
For the regular season to determine like the actual best teams in the
Oh,
playoffs.
see, I have no idea what this answer is going to be.
It's 75. You need to play best of 75 series in the playoffs to actually figure out what the best is. So I see people say like, hey, it's ridiculous. You play a 162 game season, then you do a 3-game series, 5-game series. It doesn't matter. If you do a 7-game series, it's not going to give you wildly different results. It's like a little bit bigger of a sample size, but baseball's super random. Weird shit happens. You see all the time. A ball is hit 115 miles per hour. It becomes an out. Then somebody swings, breaks their bat. The ball goes 30 miles per hour and just stops in between the third baseman and the catcher, and it's a base hit. Like there's just a lot of randomness that happens in baseball, and that's always going to lead to almost every playoff series being kind of close to 50-50.
I have no problem with it, but it is ridiculous. Like on its face, it is insane. Even crazier was the 1-game wild card that they used to have, but whatever. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk some Sims here. As Dave Perez said, sinners unite. Yeah, we're going to get that to catch on. I'll have to tell you about the squid chop at some point. At some point. Oh yeah. We'll talk. Anyway, we've gone too long with this intro, but, out of the gate, the first thing I'll say, and I know Jacob producing the show already ran it, so we can start pulling some things up. There's a couple spots that I want to see how much McCaffrey we're getting because he's far and away the highest price running back. I want to see if we're getting some Ritter stacks. That stands out because of how cheap they are in a good matchup. Just a few spots. So let's dig into this. Jacob, let's throw it up on the screen here. And I'd say first things first, let's go. Let's take a look at these lineups first. The top projected ROI, top simulated ROI lineups that we've got on this slate. So out of the gate, Tua, Carr, just looking at these stacks because there's a lot of QB +3. Personally, I've been avoiding those. So like I'm unstarring a lot of QB +3s and finding the best lineups that are QB less than +3. Especially if it's like a Derek Carr type or something. It's just, to me, I'm just not liking getting to those QB +3s, even if they are the spot that you should be. I can't do it, Greg. I can't be doing like Derek Carr +3s right now. Some of those just don't feel right.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of looking through this right here, and more QB +3 stacks this week than we've seen in some other previous weeks. We saw pop up a bunch in week 1, and then there's been less of them as we move forward throughout the year in the Sims tool. But yeah, looks like they are making a little bit of a comeback this week in terms of top projected lineups, a lot of them being QB +3 stacks. But still, I am noticing that a lot of the quarterbacks that we're getting to are a little bit different, actually, than the ones that I was expecting them to be anyway.
All right, Jacob, go to exposures and stack exposure. Wow, it's flat.
Yeah, sort by the QB +1. It looks like, so one thing I was expecting is that we were going to get to a decent amount of Stafford, which we are. The quarterbacks I was assuming we would get the most of would be Stafford and Tua. based on our top stacks tool. A lot of times there's synergy between the stacks that we get to in the Sims tool and then the stacks that rate out the best in our top stacks tool. And we have 2 teams this weekend that have way higher top stack odds than any other team to be the highest scoring stack of the weekend. One of them is the Rams, nearly a 20% chance to be the highest scoring team of the slate going up against the Cardinals. The other one is the Miami Dolphins, 19% chance going up against the Panthers. Then there's a really big drop up before you get to the Bengals at 13%, and then no other teams even in double digits. So the Stafford ownership in the 2 is what I was most interested to see. I thought we might be getting to like a ton of Stafford and a pretty good amount, but maybe not quite as much as I thought.
I can tell you this much. I love seeing that the highest exposed right now out of our favorite one, out of our 150, because Jacob, I assume you started 150 in this, is Stafford +2. My guess is you're just going to get a lot of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp.
I think it's going to be Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, just based on pricing. Because
you think so?
Puka's still very expensive. And not as expensive as he was last week. I'm trying to remember exactly what the price point is right now. But last week he was $7,700.
No, he's more expensive this week, I think.
Oh, is he? I thought he was cheaper.
I thought he was $8K.
Let me double check that. So yeah, that's just going to be really cost prohibitive to get to Stafford, Kupp, and Nacua in the same lineup. So I'm going to assume that it's Higbee and Kupp, especially because tight ends suck this week.
All right, let's go back to lineups for a second. Let's see.
Okay.
And go to filters. Can we see what the Stafford lineups are in here?
Yeah. Go to just go to player and then Stafford.
I wasn't sure if you could when you're doing lineups.
Yeah. So here's go to Jacob. See where click off this. See lineups. Scroll to the right of lineups on the right side of the page. Right side of the page where it says lineups. Down a little. Click those 3. Yeah, there we go. Then go filter.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. And now just type in Stafford.
All right. So let's see. Stafford, a lot of 3s, so that's going to have all of them, right? Or probably Kyron Williams too.
Yeah, there'll be some Kyron Williams who has been a pass catcher this year. So there are a lot of times I don't love getting a quarterback with the running back, depending who it is. You know, like I don't want to play like Tannehill stacks with Derrick Henry. Partially is because I'm not always loving playing Ryan Tannehill. But the other part too is just a running back who a lot of their production doesn't come through the passing game. I'm less apt to pair them with the QB. But somebody like Kyron Williams, who has drawn a lot of targets this year, I do think he's a viable stacking option with Stafford.
You're right about this, by the way. It's mostly either Williams and Kupp or Kupp and Higbee. Yeah. Listen, it's an expensive stack if you want to get to Kupp and you want to get to Nacua, but it's not impossible at all. Like, it's still doable. Stafford's not that expensive. He's 6,100 on this slate.
Yeah, he's 6,100. If you put a lineup in, if it's Stafford, Kupp, and Nacua, it does leave you only with an average of $4,483 for the rest of your roster spots. So it's a little prohibitive, but it is doable.
Yeah, but then if you go like Kyle Pitts and Bucks defense or something, you're talking 5,300. So like you said, it's definitely prohibitive. It's not impossible at all, though, especially if you look at some of these running backs where if you just wanted to go, all right, well, I won't throw Kyron Williams in here, but if I wanted to go Raheem Mostert in that and just say DeAndre Swift, you have 4,300 remaining per player. You and I have seen it a lot lately where people are punting like 3-4 players on a team, you know, sub 4,500 and winning big tournaments. So it might not be optimal. Like, it might not be the right approach, but it is definitely doable on this slate. It's that, especially if you go with one more cheap receiver, then you're finding your way to another like 5K guy. It's not crazy.
Yeah, it's something that I'm curious actually. Could you go back to the other screen, Jacob? Just search. I want to see if we have any Nacua lineups in there. Same thing I've done before. Just do the, go filter and then by Nacua. I'm curious what some of those lineups look like if we're getting to any of them at all. Yes, we've got 2 in our top 150. And then one thing also, if you guys see, like if you ever wanted to just manually find a lineup with a player, that maybe you're not getting exposure to that you've really liked, you could just filter by a player and it's like, oh, here's my best ROI lineup with this player, and you could select them. That is one way that you could hand select some of the lineups you get to in the Sims here. And oftentimes you're going to find that, maybe your 150th or 140th lineup has a sim ROI that's probably very similar to your like 200th lineup. So for whatever reason you like one of the other lineups better, it gives you a player you don't have exposure to. You could always click off one of your lineups, unfavorite it, and favorite one of the other ones. But yeah, so of our top 150 lineups, 2 of them are favorited. So that's 2 Nakua lineups that we've sorted right here. And that one there is Stafford, Kyron Williams, Nakua, and Higbee. And the other one, also a triple stack, Stafford, Cup, Nakua, and Higbee. So that's one. Like if I had to play one strong Rams passing game stack, I'd be more apt to go to that one with Higbee, Nakua, and Cup.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do this is like you don't have to just select if you're playing 20 lineups, just the top 20. You don't have to do that, especially if you're getting a ton of exposure. Like you said, Greg, you can go in and, so you're still getting a very nicely, like a high simulated ROI lineup. It's just you can choose some of the ones you like. DFS 28 said second week using this Sims. I think I'm struggling with, say, my top 20 lineups have 18 of the 20 same QB. Maybe I need to lower exposure. Still new to the Sims world. So am I, by the way. I've been learning a lot about this as far as our Sims tool as I go, and I do think as long as you're not going crazy with it, the ROI boost is kind of nice because what you can do is you can deboost a player if you're getting a ton. Like say you're getting a ton of the same quarterback and the same stacks, you can negatively boost them, and you'll still get them. You're still going to get them. Greg, you have to deboost these guys quite a bit to just not get any of them. You'll still get them, but then it'll bring some other guys up into the top for you as well. I've been doing a lot of that in the past few weeks.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that if you are playing 20 lineups, and yeah, there might be an individual quarterback or an individual stack that really projects much better than everything else. So of your top 20 lineups, you might find that 18 of them are the same stack. The way that I think is the best to navigate that is just find some stacks or some lineups that are stacks that are really highly projected by ROI, and just select some of the ones that are not the QB that are the same. You're finding like top 18 of your 20 lineups. And then you might be able to diversify your lineups a little bit without really sacrificing all that much projected ROI. Because oftentimes, if you go back to the other screen there, Jacob, with all the lineups, nothing filtered, if we just remove all of the filters here, and then you'll see like the difference between we'll just scroll down a little bit here. The difference between like the 20th and the 25th ROI lineup, it's like 1 or 2%. So it's a very, very minimal difference, but it could be something that you could take out, like a Stafford lineup if you're getting those really heavily in the top, and maybe you swap it out for like a Tua lineup here, or, maybe a Garoppolo lineup if you like Raiders stacks this weekend. And that's the way you could differentiate your lineups in a way that doesn't really sacrifice what you're expected to return in terms of EV.
Yeah, exactly. If we were to go to actual exposures here and start going through some of these positions, so let's go to exposures and see what we're getting. We'll start with, we already know quarterback. Let's go with running back, because the mid-range of running back is loaded this week, just absolutely loaded. All right, so just keep a couple things in mind here. One, we have Rashawn Johnson in right now. Some of this is going to change. There's a bunch of question marks and guys that we really don't know their status yet. I'm pretty certain Johnson's not going to play. So I don't think he plays. Dealing with a concussion, that seems unlikely. Although he's had some time to recover because they played on last Thursday, but he didn't participate yesterday. So he'd need to be making a pretty miraculous recovery here within the next day or two. Anyway, Mixon. So all right, let me give you an example. This is a spot where out of my 150, I would 100% be deboosting Joe Mixon.
It's a lot of Joe Mixon, and I played a good amount of him last week. It didn't go terribly, but it didn't go great either. He was just very a meh play. I think he finished with like 14.5 or 15 fantasy points, something along those lines. Didn't kill you. If you had him, you weren't thrilled about it. It didn't kill you either. It was just somebody who kind of existed, and getting to a whole ton of them that's showing up this week. And One thing I like about the Bengals is their passing game this week. Joe Burrow looked good last week. It's the first time he's looked healthy the entire year. He had a 10-yard run up the middle, which would have been impossible for him 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's just no chance. He didn't have the mobility to do it. So I do think we're going to see the Bengals get to a little bit more of pass-happy game plans than we've seen earlier in the year.
Einstein MS, do you ever boost or negatively boost team stacks instead of individual players? Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't know if Greg does, but I do.
Yeah, for football, I just do the individual players because it's all correlated. For like baseball, you could still have the individual one-off show up, and then you might get to like one stack and 40 or 50%. Now is a little bit different because we're playing, like 2-game baseball slates. But for football, I just do the individual players because I don't have any naked quarterbacks anyway.
Yeah. But if I'm getting like a ton of a player and I already know that I'm getting him, but then I don't like the stack as much, I don't mind. I think there's some nuance to it, but I'm generally using player boosts as well. But there are certain times where I might look to just like, for example, New Orleans, if the slate started now, I would negatively boost the Saints stacks themselves.
Yeah. So for me, I would just deboost Derek Carr, and it would more or less serve the exact same purpose. It's like two different ways to skin a cat and do the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. All right, let's look at some of these running backs. So Mixon, Jacobs in a spot against the Patriots, who've been outscored 72-3 over the last 2 games. Kyren Williams, Johnson, Raheem Mostert. I also assume that we're going to see Raheem Mostert's ownership come up. Kamara, Bijan, Madison, ETN. Trying to see if there's any guys that I would personally like more of. Swift, I would.
So I know one for me who I am going to want to get to more of that doesn't look like he's in any of our top 150 lineups. Breece Hall, 6K on DraftKings this weekend. He was somebody who also just ended up being much higher owned than projected last week, but he's not priced correctly. I still think of as Breece Hall as one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. He got off to the slow start. He had the torn ACL last year, but it doesn't seem like there's any restrictions on him now. Those were totally lifted last week. Even week 1, where he got, I think it was like 10 carries against the Cowboys, he looked really explosive. He was fast. He has big play upside. We saw the long touchdown run last week. There's just no way going forward that Breece Hall is only a 6K running back. I know the matchup is terrible, but even that aside, there's just no scenario where he should be as cheap as he is.
I get it. I don't fully agree, but I get it. Like I just the only issue, I guess if you're playing 150 lineups, you'd probably want to have a little bit of Breece Hall. It's just this range is loaded with good running backs. Are we getting any Kenneth Walker? Like, see, that's another spot where that's a guy that I would want to get some against a bad run defense for Cincinnati. Kenneth Walker, 6,700. I'm not as worried about Charbonnet as other people seem to be right now. He's still the guy. He's still the goal line back. Like, that's one spot. I see that we're getting some Alvin Kamara. Perfectly fine with that. His volume has been insane. Mostert. I mentioned Swift. If this is a game that the Eagles dominate on the ground, the Jets in a way are kind of a run funnel defense if you have a good blocking O-line. And I think you could actually see some of that in this spot. But yeah, that insane Mixon exposure, just looking at how deep this position is between like 6 and 7K, basically in the same range as Mixon, Greg, that Mixon exposure for me personally, and look, I'm definitely not the be all end all when it comes to, making the right decisions on this stuff. A lot of people that with these tools that know exponentially more than I do, but 74% Mixon on an 11-game slate with that many good running backs in the same price range, I would very much like to get away from that much exposure without question.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's almost certainly going to be something that changes by the time we get to Sunday, especially as more players get ruled out, other value opens up. You mentioned Roschon Johnson. I agree. I don't think he plays. Unless something changed last week, there's not been a single player that's had a concussion, been in the protocol, and played the next week yet this season.
Yeah, Luke Musgrave did.
Oh, Musgrave did?
But it was a Thursday game and then a Monday game. So, yeah. I think he did, right? Didn't Luke Musgrave leave with a concussion? Didn't Musgrave? You guys can tell me. I'm so almost certain he had a concussion, and then he played the next week, unless he was being evaluated for one and didn't go into the protocol. That's possible too.
Let's see. He was. It says he cleared concussion protocol, but yeah, you're right. He left the game and was diagnosed for the concussion. So he's the first one. Roschon Johnson would be the second one. And I guess if there are some parallels between the two, Roschon Johnson played on a Thursday. The game's on a Sunday. So it is a little bit longer of a rest time for him. But still, if we're just looking at overall what's happened this year with concussions, which I think is a very, very direct impact of what happened with Tua last year, NFL is being very strict with who they let come back into games. And when they let them return, they're making it harder for players to get a concussion and just play the next game. And most likely, I think Johnson sits.
Tokyo Swan said Dalvin Cook all the way down at 4,800. That's where he should be. Yeah. That's where he should. Honestly, that's where he should be. I don't have much interest there. We can take a look at wide receivers as well. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, comments in chat, we see all of them, by the way. Rachaad White's the only other guy that I would mention, only because, they're coming off a bye. Everybody's hyped on Detroit, which I understand. They're a good football team. But Rachaad White might not be the worst. I mean, he's what? Is he still sub 6K? Rachaad White, 5,500. I'm not excited about him like I was in week 2 or even week 1, and he struggled. But week 2, he was great. But I think he's viable. Like, he's 18 touches, 17 touches, 22 touches, 19 touches this season for a $5,500 guy in a game with a 3-point spread at home, presumably good weather, coming off a bye, averaging over 3 targets per game. I don't think that's crazy.
He's on the field a ton. And often we see the opportunity is more important than how good the players are or how many points the team is going to score. We saw that with, was it like 2 weeks ago with Miles Sanders, or 3 weeks ago where he had a ton of catches in the second half of the game and got there just based on PPR. Alvin Kamara, his first game back, they threw the ball. Derek Carr checked the ball down to him on almost every single play. Alvin Kamara had shit for production, but he had like 13 catches for 33 yards.
Amazing, right?
It's terrible, but it's great for DraftKings. It's somewhat valuable for FanDuel, not quite as valuable, but still, that's where the opportunity matters more than anything.
Absolutely. B-Spurf or BS-Perf or BSP-ERF or BSP-RF or B-Spur-F. I don't know. You tell me, dude. Anyway, is Chuba Hubbard going to be chalk if Miles Sanders is out? I don't know. But this backfield stinks. I tweeted yesterday. I said, give the backfield to Laviska Shenault. Let that fella eat. These guys stink. I don't know. What's his price? What's Chuba's price?
$4,300. Something else to consider as well is that the Dolphins are almost certainly going to destroy the Panthers. And what we've seen from the Panthers in these games that are lopsided, they have Chuba Hubbard out there just catching passes in garbage time and in some of those 2-minute drills. So is he going to be chalk? It's hard to say, but he's certainly someone I'm going to want to roster. If you just go and look at the game that he played against the Saints, for instance, that was a game they were trailing. He ended up getting targeted 5 times in that game. He caught all 5 of the passes for 34 yards.
Yeah, he was on the entire final drive when they scored that touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, just considering the matchup and what I expect the game script to be, I think Hubbard just gets targeted a ton of that game.
He probably will. At 4,300, Chuba Hubbard's a great. The problem is the touchdown equity there is so minimal. I haven't looked yet, but my guess is there's probably 1 combined touchdown between the 2 of them through 5 games.
I'm almost positive that's what the number is, because Hubbard doesn't have any. And then we have, I think, 1 receiving touchdown for Sanders, if I remember correctly. He has, 1 rushing touchdown, wasn't a receiving touchdown. So yeah, 1 between both of them. The team never scores points.
The problem is neither of those guys are particularly good unless there's an opening, right? Like they're not down. That's why Donta Foreman was actually pretty good there, because he could create yards on his own. The guy might not be great, but at least after first contact, the guy can still pick up some yards. speaking of, Javonte Williams looked good yesterday. TE said Laffy doesn't give any info. What are you talking about, dude? I do 18 fucking shows a week. I give as much info as I possibly can. What are you talking about?
Yeah, lots of info here. I mean, like it depends what info are you looking for?
Yeah, and this show's just different than all of the other ones. Anyway, yeah, he at 4,300. My guess is that yes, Chuba Hubbard will be chalky. Would you agree that he probably would be chalky at 4,300?
Yeah, depending like what we're saying chalky is, but I would think he's somewhere in the neighborhood of like
15 to 17.
Yeah, like mid to high teens in terms
Me
of
too.
ownership.
Me too. Yeah, Johnny Mingo said Mingo is my cousin. That's a good play. Is he actually your cousin? Get him on the show. Get us in touch. It was actually Justin on our show yesterday that had brought Mingo up, saying he's a decent that he's a decent looking cheap play. And the more I dug into it, the more it actually kind of made sense to me that he is, because it's not exciting. It's clearly Adam Thielen. If you wanted to say DJ Shark ahead of Jonathan Mingo, fine. But he's like a mid 3K price point. There's a very good possibility that this team is going to be down early and often. And while Mingo hasn't been a guy that's done a whole lot downfield thus far, he's coming off a 7-target game, I think, and a blowout loss. Mm-hmm. We could check that. But in the blowout loss to the Lions, is it possible that at 3,500 you go, hey, how do you feel about somebody who's seen 8, 6, and 7 targets over his last 3 games and is likely going to be playing from behind against a fine but not spectacular Miami defense? Yeah, you know what? I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world to get to some, especially, you know what? You're going with Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford. You might need a guy like this.
I'm going to be playing a good amount of Dolphin stacks this weekend. Mentioned before, our top stacks tool, the 2 teams that have the highest top stack odds, and they're just way separated from every other team on the slate. It's the Rams, it's the Dolphins. The Dolphins are fairly expensive. I'm going to be playing Tua. I'm going to be playing Mostert. I'm going to be playing Tyreek Hill. I'm going to be playing Waddle. That's probably all the players from the Dolphins I'm going to. We do a very concentrated target share when Tua throws the football. And now the running back situation, Achane, he's out, so Mostert is going to be the guy. So I presume in my Dolphin stacks is really just going to be those 4 guys. But what's going to happen in a lot of those stacks is I know that some of those lineups are going to have run backs for a couple of reasons. Number one, it just makes sense from a correlation perspective. But the other part too, the Panthers are so cheap on the other end that getting one of those cheap guys as a run back, whether it ends up being Chuba Hubbard if Miles Sanders out, or somebody like Jonathan Mingo, it's going to make it easier to fit in the exorbitant price tags of the Dolphins players. So I do think that there's a chance that I'm going to be getting to some exposure to Mingo for sure, just based on how those lineups are going to come together.
A couple of people saying Rondale Moore over Mingo. Yeah, sure. I think Rondale Moore is a perfectly good play as well against the Rams. He has involvement on the ground as well, which is helpful. He had that 45-yard touchdown earlier in the season in that win against Dallas. For sure. I think there's a lot to like there. He's not super involved as a pass catcher, but if you're looking at, hopefully 4, 5, 6 targets maybe, and a few attempts on the ground, matter of fact, you might just see a lot more Rondale Moore this week. I won't say a lot more, but with James Conner on the IR, I don't know if Keontae Ingram's going to play, but it's not like you have anybody special back there. Maybe Rondale Moore does see like 5 rushing attempts this week. And everyone's like, they might just throw to him more in the flat. Well, that's all he gets anyway. He's like a negative A dot player. But a few more attempts. Yeah, I think 3,500 with no James Conner looks good too.
Yeah, and also when it comes to Rondale Moore, it's kind of funny because I'm going to feel the same way about him that I felt about Mingo. I know people in chat are comparing more to Mingo, but in some of those lineups where I need salary savings for Ram stacks, if we're going Stafford, we're going Cooper Kupp, maybe you'll line up with Nacua that we're looking at as well, then yeah, it makes sense with Rondale Moore as a run back in those lineups to save salary, give you some extra correlation. So Ram stacks, so I'm looking to go cheap, it's probably going to be Rondale Moore on the other side. Whereas if it's a Dolphin stack and I'm looking to go cheap with a run back on the other side, it's more apt to be Mingo.
Let's talk about wide receivers here. Take a look, Jacob, if we can. We'll go into wide receivers real quick, though. Guys, most of you know this. I know most of you. It's so, my barber today, I was getting my haircut, and he's like, he's He's like, yeah, I used my bonus bets. I swear to God. He's like, I remember when Caesars was doing the 50 and the 250.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, yeah, I used my bonus bets. I cashed 500 on that. I said, it's like, where'd you find them? He's like, through you guys. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. He's like, yeah, that was a great bonus. I cashed 500 and took it out. I swear to God, this morning, I got to sneeze here. I got allergies or something. Oh, quick on the trigger finger there. But yeah, if you guys are there's promos that mix in and out all the time. Greg knows, doing it on the Odd Shopper channel, on this channel. Sometimes BetMGM will have a great promo. Sometimes it'll be Caesars. I think all of us are probably on DraftKings and FanDuel already. The best one right now is only available in 6 states, but if you're in one of them, take advantage of it. It's Colorado, Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey, Iowa, and then Kentucky. It's bet $5 on Bet365 and get $150. If you're in Kentucky, it's bet $1 and get $365. So you're just getting free money for doing nothing. That's it. You're taking 2 minutes of your time. The link is in the description. Jacob can throw it in the chat. You click that if you want to take advantage. If you're in Colorado, Virginia, Ohio, or Iowa, or in Kentucky, that's the big one. You click it, you verify yourself. It takes 2 minutes. You deposit $10. You only bet 5. Put it on a parlay because you're getting 150 whether you win or lose. If you're in Kentucky, you only bet 1. You get $365. Deposit 10, bet 1, or deposit 10, bet 5, 150 or 365. It's huge. You're making $150 in 2 minutes. You're making $75 a minute. You're getting on multiple sports books, so you're not losing to the hook anymore because you're actually shopping the smart out. You're being smart, shopping the lines. You're not getting the touchdown prop at plus 150 when you could have got it at plus 290, that type of stuff. And you're just getting free money. So if you're in those states, take advantage of it. No better time to do so than now. These promos are always in flux and they disappear. We'll wake up one morning and we'll get a message, hey, it's gone. Pull it. So link in the description and chat. Must be 21 years or older to gamble. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in Kentucky, by the way. All right, let's take a look at receivers. So, Christian, wow, look at some of those exposures, dude. That is frightening.
Pretty spread out. It's not like there's one receiver we're getting to in a mass amount of lineups or anything like that.
I love that we're getting above the field on Davante Adams right now. That's a guy that I was looking to target for sure.
Yeah, get into a hand. And I assume if you scroll down a little bit, Tyreek Hill won't be far behind either, just because of the amount of Tua. Yeah, all right, good guess. So there are a lot of good pay-up wide receivers on this slate, and they're all very similar looking. Jamar Chase, Davante Adams, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill. I was curious to see which of the studs we're getting to the most here because I don't really know how to differentiate them all. It looks like for our Sims, so it's like just the same amount of all of them, about 20% of all these dudes.
I'm okay with that.
Same.
Right? Because on a slate like this, let me ask you, how do you really, and I'm not saying that this can't work. I'm not saying that you can't, just hit the jackpot with it. But how do you confidently differentiate, Greg, between like a Tyreek Hill, a Jamar Chase, and we'll see if T. Higgins is playing. How do you confidently differentiate between Hill, between Davante Adams, between Jamar Chase, like all of those guys up top? There's some really, really good, Cooper Kupp being another one. Look at those. The 4 of them right now in between 20 and 23% exposure. We're basically with the field or above the field. We're decent amount above the field on Adams, decent amount above the field on Hill, pretty much with the field on Kupp and Chase. Don't hate that at all. Now, my guess is do we have T. Higgins in or out would be the question.
In right now. I'm fairly sure.
If T. Higgins is out, we have to get, ownership's going to go up on Chase, but do you think I think we'd get more of them still.
Yeah. So we have Jamar Chase as our most roster, these stud wide receivers by a very slim margin, 23.3% for him and then 22.7% for Adams. If we do, or I should say when Higgins gets rolled out, because I think he's probably more likely to sit than play today, I would guess we end up with like 30% of Jamar Chase, and then it's something like 2 to 3% less of each of Adams, Kupp, and Hill.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
There would be a trickle-down effect of that too, where we'd end up getting to more of Joe Burrow. Because if Jamar Chase projects better It's not that Joe Burrow individually is going to look better, but it's just going to be easier to build stacks with Joe Burrow because you just know where almost all of the targets are going to. Just like last week, where we used to get 15 catches for Jamar Chase. It was a team record for the Bengals, nearly 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. So it would just be really easy to go back to him again and be like, hey, if I'm playing Joe Burrow, I know a lot of these targets are going to Jamar Chase with Higgins out of the picture.
Rand said people sleeping on the Seahawks. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I talked about Kenneth Walker a lot. I will say, though, it is a little bit difficult to get to guys like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett this week. That's the only thing I'd say. Not that you can't do it, but it feels kind of tough to get there.
Yeah, and it's funny because as Jacob's scrolling down on wide receiver exposure, right after you said it's hard to get to Lockett and Metcalf, Lockett showed up on screen, but we have 2.7% of him, whereas the field is at nearly 10%. So pretty far underweight to him.
It makes sense to me, just looking at how many options we have. I was surprised we only had 1% Puka. I know he's expensive, but man, those guys made up like 73% of the target share in Cooper Kupp's first week back.
And Kupp looked fine. It was like there was never any injury or issue at all. I was really surprised by the fact that they basically let him go out there with no kind of restrictions. I know that McVay had said that before the game where he said there are no restrictions on him, but we see coaches say that kind of stuff all the time, and it's almost always incorrect. So I was really surprised to see that he was out there as much as he was and looked totally healthy. He had 8 catches for 116, 118 yards, whatever that number ended up being, and he crushed.
I almost want to play more Nakua if I'm playing Ram stacks. Like I just think ultimately in all of these spots, now that he's that expensive and Cooper Kupp is back, would I rather play Nakua or would I rather play Jamar Chase? Would I rather play Nakua as a one-off or would I rather play Devontae Adams? I think it's always going to come down to, I think for me, it's mostly going to be those other guys. But I am interested in just I like him more in Stafford stacks with Cooper Kupp. Just in the event, Greg, that like they really do see a 70% combined target share again. You know, like in the event that against Arizona, this team puts up 35 points and, you know, 3/4 of the passing attempts go to Nakua and Cooper Kupp. If it's that consolidated or concentrated, that's actually where I like Nakua the most. Instead of being like, let me swap some of these Devontae Adams or Jamar Chase lineups to Puka Nakua.
Yeah, I think I would have to have Stafford as the quarterback in those lineups.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Yeah. I'm not looking to play Nakua by himself. But yeah, I think that makes sense. If you could fit in the salary, make it work, either go Stafford to Nakua or the double stacks we're talking about at the top of the show with Stafford, Kupp, and Nakua.
Let's look at some tight ends here as well. This is all right. Before Jacob pulls it up, let's take a guess. How much Pitts do you think we're getting to? Don't look at his ownership.
Yeah, I don't. So I'm going to assume we have a good amount of Higbee and Smythe just based on our quarterback exposures.
You're right.
We didn't have much Ritter, if I remember correctly.
I'm going to say like 5%.
I'll say 15% of Pitts.
Okay, let's see it, Jacob.
Oh, almost none of them.
No! Wait, hold on. You scrolled down already, I assume? Okay.
Yeah, he just said Pitts centered there.
Yeah. All right, so here's what I can tell you. Again, personal adjustment. Like these are spots where I will. These are spots where I think I would say I would like less Zach Ertz and more Kyle Pitts. If I'm playing in large field tournaments, I would like more. I know it's gross, but he's coming off an 11. He's $3,500, Greg.
It's just how many times can you fool me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not like Ertz has been good.
No, so the reason that we are getting to Ertz, I will almost guarantee, is because of our Stafford and Rams exposure. Like in a weird way, if you did a negative ROI boost on Stafford, you'd get to a lot less Zach Ertz just because it's correlation purposes.
Ertz, Higbee, We had a ton of Hawkinson, which makes total sense without Justin Jefferson.
And just the other tight ends suck on this. Like we don't have a Kelsey slate.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. He's just so cheap. And we're getting to a lot of other cheap options. The Higbee stuff makes sense because we have a lot of Stafford, like you said. Joshua Dobbs with Zach Ertz, sure. Ingram is nice. Ingram hasn't had that blow-up game yet. It's probably coming at some point. Not getting a ton of ownership, 11%. Ertz is at 12%. What do we have Pitt's ownership at? 8.6?
8.6, yeah.
Other people saying Pitts is not the play. Logan, I assume you mean Logan Thomas. Yeah, you're talking about Logan Thomas is the play this week. Logan Thomas is fine too. But that's the thing about the position, Greg. I could literally rattle off 7, 8 guys here that are all in kind of that same bucket that are cheap. That it's like, yeah, he might have a decent game, but he also needs to score.
Do you know what almost always happens with tight end? Hawkinson is most live to have a big game and go off. We've got no Justin Jefferson there. If you look at the Vikings, it's going to be presumably a lot of targets going to Jordan Addison, a lot of targets going to TJ Hawkinson. Maybe KJ Osborne steps up as well. It's going to be my lineups, either TJ Hawkinson at tight end or a tight end that correlates with the quarterback that I'm playing, or a run back from the other side of the game. Other than that, it's like a crapshoot. And what's most likely to happen with tight end this week is unless TJ Hawkinson has a really big game, you're probably going to have a tight end that scores like 8 fantasy points. It's in the optimal lineup, where we see this all the time with tight end. You look at the slate to be like, there's 1 or 2 guys I like, everybody else sucks. And then the final slate ends up being over. You look at the leaderboard, it's like, oh, cool. Somebody won a GPP, won $1 million. Their tight end scored 2 fantasy points because all of them sucked. All of them sucked equally, and it just didn't matter.
I'll tell you what, this is insane seeing. I'm not saying chat is insane. I'm saying that it's pretty insane seeing how high everyone in chat is on Logan Thomas. I don't know. Maybe, guys, maybe we're on slightly different pages here because I think Logan Thomas is a fine play. But I'm also not blind to the fact that this is still a team with Terry McLaurin, with Jahan Dotson, with Curtis Samuel. This is still a team that would prefer to run the football. Logan Thomas is coming off one really nice game with 11 targets where they played from behind from the jump for multiple scores. Logan Thomas is a good play, but to pretend that he's just wildly safe is not true either. Like, he's not safe. He's not a safe play.
The reason people are gravitating towards Logan Thomas is because he just had his best game.
That's what I said. He had an 11 target game.
Yeah. It might have been 3 years since Logan Thomas played as well as he did. If the order of these games is different, right? If Logan Thomas's stat line for week 5 was in week 4, if Logan Thomas's stat line in week 4 is in week 5, I don't even think anybody in chat would be bringing up now.
They wouldn't. But also, this isn't like a play Pitts and don't play Logan Thomas, but it's to be like, no, play this guy and fade this guy is where you're going to get, like, I'm telling you, if you're pushing all your chips in to the center of the table on one tight end punt play and fading all the others, more times than not, that's going to do more damage than good. I can promise you that much. Because they're all volatile here, Greg. Every one of these guys is volatile.
Yeah, if you guys are playing cash games, just play TJ Hawkinson, right? Just go play TJ Hawkinson. He's going to be higher owned by the time we get to lock. I find it very unlikely he's actually only going to be 11.9%, because Hawkinson, to me, and you see it right now in the Sim store running through, we're getting to him in nearly half of our lineups. He's just so sensible in the absence of Justin Jefferson. And another thing, too, is if you look at the tight end pricing, he's $6,600. Laporta, who's been your guy, I think that probably your biggest hit of the season, in my opinion, Lofty, has been how high you were on Sam Laporta coming in and maintained that throughout the year.
So far, yeah.
But he's also questionable to play. If he is out, TJ Hawkinson is the only tight end priced over $5,000. He's $6,600. If you have a good amount of salary left, you're filling out your tight end spot, it's just Hawkinson by default, which I think just drives his ownership up because there's nobody else remotely close to him in salary.
Exactly. Even a guy like Kylan Granson, that we have 1% of him. He's 2,900. I don't know. I look at these guys as just its numbers, basically. Take the name out of it for a moment. So many of them are almost identical.
Yeah, totally agree. Other than Hawkinson, and he's in his own.
Yeah, right. Well, that's kind of why I'm generally lower on Tyler Higbee, on guys like Tyler Higbee, because a lot of times you have to pay more for Higbee than these other guys, and they're basically the same player. So he's down to 4K this year. Yeah. Brad Moore says if it's Thomas versus Pitts, it's Thomas and it's not close. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't be more wrong.
So if you look at our projections here, we have Logan Thomas projected better. We get to him more lineups, but it's still a thin margin, right? Their ownership nearly identical, 8.6% to 8.3%. Pitts is more popular by the narrowest of margins. In terms of our projection, we've got Logan Thomas projected for 0.4 more fantasy points. We got to 2.7% exposure to Logan Thomas versus 2% of Pitts. So it's one more Logan Thomas lineup. Our projections do indicate it's pretty close between the two of them. Of
course it's close. Any projections are going to indicate that it's close. To be like it's not close between 235, it's silly. Anyway. All right. What else do we want to look at here? We got a few minutes to go before we turn this page over to the podcast exclusive. Well, afternoon slate breakdown. If you guys have to, bookmark it. Come back to it on Sunday afternoon if things get ugly, or even if they don't, you just want some analysis. Greg and I spend like 25, 30 minutes breaking down the afternoon slate every week, only on podcast platforms. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that stuff. And all these shows are up there as well. So subscribe to that. And if you haven't, leave us a rating or review, or just come check out the shows. I think you'll enjoy them. Anything else you want to take a look at here before we wrap this up?
Yeah, let's go and look at the running back and wide receivers. Running back more in particular, because we didn't really look at the crazy contrarian options we might be getting to. We saw how concentrated we were at the top. We had, 74% of Joe Mixon, if I remember that correctly. Yeah, so 74%. But if we scroll down, who are some of the contrarian options that look like they would potentially be good at running back? Is there anybody we're getting to for super low ownership here?
Real quick, I don't know how to pronounce it. EWW said can't knock Thomas last week bias and then tout Pitts based on the same thing. I'm not. And first of all, I've been talking about Pitts for a bunch of weeks, but I'm not. I'm saying it's a lot closer than you think. Forget about last week for both of them. I'm just saying it's close. It's a lot closer. And as Greg pointed out, they're separated by 0.4 in the projections. It's close. Anyway, what was your question?
Oh, I just wanted to see if we scroll down, if there was any super contrarian plays we're getting to at running back or wide receiver. Like, there are any 2, 3, 4, single digit percentage owned players that we're getting
Zach
to
Moss, but we're hardly getting any.
That's a tricky scenario. What do you think we're going to see out of the backfield for the Colts? Are they going how do you take away? So two thoughts here. How do you take away touches from Zach Moss after how well he played last week in the season so far? But then conversely, how do you not give touches to Jonathan Taylor given the amount of money they just paid him?
Because a week 6 game doesn't really mean shit when you're trying to make the playoffs. That's what Eric and I had this conversation yesterday. I don't think in week 6, this is going to be a Jim Irsay thing being like, I need to feed Taylor every carry because we just paid him and we don't want to look stupid. I mean, I think looking stupid would be him getting hurt again when you have a guy in Zach Moss where you can, I don't want to say split snaps, but split carries, but I don't, it's very difficult for me to believe, like you said, Zach Moss coming off a monster game against a really stout Titans run defense. A Titans run defense that had given up nothing all season through the first 4 weeks, and he just ripping off monster plays. Why would you just hand the keys over to Jonathan Taylor 1 week later just because you paid him? I don't know. I don't see it. I don't really like either of these guys, though, this week.
Neither do I, but I was just kind of looking through our exposures, curious what we ended up getting to here. There's going to be one of these games kind of like last week with Cooper Kupp is a little bit different because I was hoping there was going to be a Cooper Kupp slate where we could kind of speculate that his usage was going to go up and we could play him when he was lower owned. Apparently, it was just his first game back. The same thing is going to happen with Jonathan Taylor, though, where people aren't playing him. And then all of a sudden it's the Jonathan Taylor week. And he's only $6,400. Not saying this is the week I want to play him, but there's going to be a week in the next couple of games or so where all of a sudden Taylor is going to be the lead back. And we're going to look back and just be like, how do we not play Jonathan Taylor like 5,800 or 6,200, whatever he ends up being?
Yeah, for sure. But also, Colin, why aren't you guys covering the 3K value guys? We've been talking about a ton of them all show. And we cover them on Thursday's show, Wednesday's show, Tuesday. So you can go back and check those out as well if you haven't yet.
So, I mean, there just aren't those guys to talk about at running back because that's not what's the min salary
4K.
at running back now. Yeah. So
4K.
The reason we don't talk about a running back is because there are none. But at wide receiver, we talked about a couple of them. We talked about Mingo. We talked about Rondell Moore and the different scenarios we're going to use them in. But yeah, they just don't exist at running back.
Yeah, if you want to get cheap at running back, it's probably Chuba Hubbard only if Miles Sanders is out. Donta Foreman if Roschon Johnson is out because Khalil Herbert's not going to play. Maybe Keontae Ingram, but that's gross too because you have DeMarcado. He's 4,900. There's a few of them. Nobody that stands out in a huge way to me. But yeah, you know what? With the whole Moss thing though, he's on a 1-year contract. This is last year with the team, I should say. This is last year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent. He's getting paid like $1 million this year. And Brandon said, yeah, the Colts looking stupid was paying him how they did in the first place. Totally agree. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. But yeah.
Also, the way that they handled it was very bizarre because the Colts and Jim Irsay, they were taking this stance that they didn't have to pay Jonathan Taylor to be basically have a good running game, good offense. And what we saw from them to open up the year is Jonathan Taylor, whether the injury was Fugazi, whether it was real or not, it's hard to say which was which. But either way, there was a clear contract dispute. They were not willing to pay him. And instead they were like, hey, we've got Zach Moss here on a 1-year contract. He's very cheap. We're just going to play him and kind of show that there isn't all that much value to running backs. And to me, it seemed like the Colts were proven correct because Zach Moss was just killing the game. In fact, the Colts running game to open up the season was way better this year than it was last year with Jonathan Taylor. And they started the season fairly decently. They were a 2-2 team. And then for whatever reason, they cave to Jonathan Taylor's contract demands
it's crazy.
When the team was outperforming expectations, the running game was great. One of the best running games in football. And then the first game back, we've got Jonathan Taylor plays backseat to Zach Moss rush for 164 yards. It was very bizarre how the whole contract negotiation went. And somehow Jonathan Taylor won despite none of this working for him. Like everything went against him the first few weeks of the season. And the Colts were like, all right, we'll pay you now.
Chris Gill said Moss is done.
Probably. In terms of like his upside that he had in the first few games of the year.
Oh yeah, but not as far as work. I don't understand why you would just stop giving him opportunities in week 6.
Yeah, he's not done in terms of like done, but he's done in terms of like, I don't really have interest in playing him as a DFS.
Oh, neither do I. No, of course not. Of course not. But I just think it's put it this way. When I say he's not done, I'm not talking fantasy wise. I'm saying I think he still tamps down Jonathan Taylor's opportunities. If I asked you right now, how many, if I had to ask you touches or not even touches, percent of carries, percent of, we'll even go snaps, percent of snaps in this game, week 6 against Jacksonville, what would you project for these two guys?
50-50. I think they alternate drives.
I think the same thing, really. Yeah, I think 50-50 is totally reasonable. Last week it was 80-15. Trey Sermon got 3 snaps, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's how they do it. I think they go, here's a Jonathan Taylor drive, here's a Zach Moss drive. Here's Jonathan Taylor drive, here's a Zach Moss drive. That's my best guess.
Yeah, I'm probably just staying away from that for now. Anyway, any other comments before we get out of here? I thought I saw one. Thought I saw a good question, but I can't. Oh, there. Einstein says, is Salvin Ahmed going to get any meaningful touches this week? Well, first of all, I don't know if Jeff Wilson's going to be back.
I think he's expected to sit. Let me double check that though.
Is he?
And
Offensive coordinator Frank
from the
Smith
IR
said
yet.
that he looks ready to play this weekend.
So I'll say that even if even if Jeff Wilson is to be out, I'm not overly confident in Ahmed, but I'm definitely not if Jeff Wilson's in. It's still, and by the way, Mostert is someone I'm going to play a lot of regardless.
Me too. But yeah, Jeff Wilson returning. If you had three guys in the backfield, I'd probably be underwhelmed by anything you're getting behind Raheem Mostert. I still wouldn't worry about it though. Any final thoughts before we head out of here for the day?
No, just listen to our podcast. If you guys are playing the main slate and it's not going well, or if maybe you just are looking to play another afternoon slate, Loughran and I are about to be recording an afternoon specific podcast, and that's going to be a way that you guys can get access to all the information for the afternoon slate. And nobody else is really doing content on that.
Absolutely. And don't forget too, if you want all of our tools for the entirety of a week, this exact Sims tool that we're doing right here that we highlight and showcase on every show, ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, premium Discord, lineup generator, all of that stuff, go to Owner's Box, deposit a minimum of $10. Now, they have a first match deposit bonus up to $500. So if you have the means to do so, definitely consider that. They got awesome super flex contests, 25K up top this week. We saw that didn't fill last week either. This has been pretty far from filling. So there's for sure dead money in there that you should be taking advantage of if you want to get in. We had one guy that used our Sims tool in the parking lot of a softball game on Monday night when I read off the top simulated lineups for Owner's Box in our Sims tool, and he took first place over there on their showdown slate, which was wonderful to see because it shows that our Sims tool is working, and also to see people get money over on Owner's Box. But yeah, first match deposit bonus up to $500, $10 minimum deposit. If you want to get all of our tools for the entirety of the week, every single slate, we got you covered. Link in the description and in chat. You don't need a promo code, even if it asks. Just a link, and we'll find you guys. And we'll see you back here next Friday. Greg and Neil tomorrow, tournament strategy show. We'll see you tomorrow. What is that, 1 o'clock?
1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Eastern. Be around for that, and we'll see you on Sunday for a deeper dive in Live Before Lock. Later, guys.